So this is all about harvesting rhubarb. We're going to talk about the Amish and the Mennonite tradition of growing rhubarb, and we're going to can today. So let's get started in today's video.
Welcome to Homestead Tessie.
Welcome everybody back to my garden. And the rhubarb is a staple in the Amish and Mennonite home. And today I'm going to show you how they use it in one of the recipes for canning. So let's go ahead and let's harvest some of this rhubarb. For about 15 years, I've been looking for this rhubarb. I have Victoria rhubarb growing, but I always wanted the crimson red rhubarb, and I couldn't find any until a subscriber found it for me, and I grew it last year. So let's go ahead and let's harvest some today. In harvesting rhubarb, you're going to just pull like this. You're not going to cut it. We're going to go ahead and snap off a few. So we snap them off at the base. This will give us a really nice red rhubarb. Look for the larger stalks. All right, we're gonna go ahead and I'll show you the Victoria. So now what we're going to do is we are just going to twist the tops off. The leaves are poisonous. Don't ever use the leaves. So we're just gonna go ahead and twist the tops off. Then we are going to wash them really good, and then we're going to cut them up in cubes. My grandma Fanny, she loved rhubarb. And rhubarb comes up every single year, so it's only one expense. All right, so let's go into the kitchen and let's start canning. Jam. I'm making it the old-fashioned way. I am striving not to use any pectin anymore. Pectin is an added expense, and really you don't need it if you just boil your jam long enough. I am using a very old vintage cookbook. And this one is the Freezing Canning Cookbook, and this one is a series from Farm Journal. Farm Journal was a magazine that a lot of the farmers would get, and they also had a lot of cookbooks, and a lot of the plain people used the Farm Journal. Now, when I talk about the plain people, I can talk about the Amish or the Mennonite. I am more familiar with the Mennonite. The Amish and the Mennonite are similar, except for the Amish are more strict. I'm referring today with the Mennonite mostly because my grandma Fanny was Mennonite. But I do have Amish in my family, but it was a very distant relative. My mom had two aunts, and they were spinsters. That means they never got married, and they were, in fact, Amish. They were horse and buggy people. Now, I never met them, but my mother would talk many memories of them, and they lived to be a very old age, living together happily. Memories of my mother and I. My mother would pick flowers that they loved, and I don't really remember. I do remember distinctively a few small memories, but I would have been very small. So there is Amish in our family. It's just, it was very, very far back. But let's go ahead and let's make some of this today. It's very simple and very easy and very straightforward. So in order not to use pectin, you need to have a thermometer because you need to know if you reach this certain temperature stage. And that temperature stage is 280. So you want it to get really hot. And that's what's going to give you to the nice stage where it's like jam. All right, so we're going to go ahead and cut up this rhubarb, and we're going to have rhubarb strawberry. All right, so now what we're going to do is we have for 3 cups of strawberries and 3 cups of rhubarb and 6 cups of sugar. So that's about what we have here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add 2 cups of the sugar, and then we're going to start boiling it, and then we'll add the rest of the sugar. And then I will show you when it gets to the stage where we know that it's jam. So let's go ahead and put the sugar in. Can you substitute and not have as much sugar? Yes, you can, but you will have to boil it longer. Can you have an alternate than sugar? I don't know. I'm using old-fashioned recipes. I don't use any substitute for sugar. We eat jelly in we eat jam. We eat jam in moderation. So I am not sure about all of the different things that are in today's standards. Typically, the Mennonites, they cook with stuff like this. They don't use a lot of synthetic sweeteners. They don't do a lot of that. Now, they will use honey, but they use really just traditional old-fashioned recipes that have been handed down through the generations. My grandma and grandpa on the Martin side, they loved their desserts. They did a lot of cooking of desserts, and they loved their sweets. But they also were a farm family. They worked very hard on the farm. And so they used up a lot of the energy that all that good eating would take. My grandma and grandpa, they had 16 children. My dad was a family of 16. 2 of the children passed away. So there was 14 in all that were living, and the majority of them are still living today. All right, I'm adding the 3 cups now. It said 2 cups, but I'm gonna add the 3 cups now. And then I'm going to make the jam. Because we are water bath canning, we will need to soak the lids in some hot water. All right, so while we're working on that, I'm going to be making some of my onion rolls. I have a lot of videos on this. I will just share with you in the description box the link to making this bread mix. This is by far the best mix I've ever made, and I've made many different kinds. So simple and easy. Only takes moments to put it together. Half. So the idea of the pectin is so people don't have to take a lot of time to boil the jam, but you don't really necessarily need pectin in most of the things that you can. You really don't need the pectin, just boil it longer. It takes a lot longer, but you don't have that expense. I'll take a moment and answer a question. A lot of people ask me, well, you talk a lot about your family. What about your siblings, Tessie? We don't hear much about them. I really don't share a whole lot about my siblings because they're totally opposite of me. So I always loved the plain lifestyle. I always loved the Mennonite lifestyle. I always thought it was really cool and neat. And as the older I get, the more I'm really developing that love of just my ancestry and my roots. So I do have 2 sisters and a brother. None of them whatsoever are interested in this lifestyle. I have 2 sisters that are career girls. I would call them career. They like outside the home, they have a career. And my brother is not interested in this lifestyle either, as far as living it. So I am the only one in the family. And maybe that is because of my personality, and maybe because I was adopted. But my mother and I were extremely close. And my father. My father and I were the closest, but I was close with my mother as well. And my siblings are a lot older than me. Now, the sibling closest to me, she's 5 years older than me, so we kind of grew up together. But my oldest sister was married the year I was born. So you can understand that there was a big gap there. But I just love the old ways of living. And then I married into a family that tradition was extremely important. The Mennonite way was extremely important. And so I just married into all of that, and I just flourished because I got to spend one-on-one time with my mother-in-law and with my grandma. See, on my husband's side, there's only boys. There are no girls. And my mother-in-law and my grandma always liked to have a girl. I kind of filled in that void while they were living. You know, we were always so close. We lived on the farm right near each other. And so I just really was a sponge and soaked up all the old ways. Let's talk a little bit about the Mennonite and the Amish garden. So what would be a homemaker's garden? The men would plow it up using horse and using a disc. And the women then would do the planting, and they would do the weeding, and they also would do the harvesting and the preserving. So you see me till the ground. Normally the Amish and Mennonite women wouldn't do the tilling. Their husbands would do that. I like to till the ground. My husband would gladly do it for me, but I enjoy the exercise. So let's go ahead and cut this up. So what we're doing is we're cutting these up in cubes. Now, young rhubarb is so much better because the older it gets, the stringier it gets, and then you have strings, almost like a string green bean. So these are really nice and young. I'll go ahead and wash these one more time after I cut them.